John Magus, Superintendent.
Jill Lofald, school board member and a member of the policy committee.
Great, thank you. So we are going to start with policy for first reading. We have one policy, policy 413, prohibiting harassment and violence. We're deleting our current 413 and adopting NSBA's model policy. And I will read the purpose as I always do. The purpose of this policy is to maintain a learning and working environment free from harassment and violence on the basis of race, color, creed, religion, national origin or origin, sex, age, marital status, familial status, status with regard to public assistance, sexual orientation, or disability protected class. And then it goes on to go over the general statement, definitions, and reporting procedures, investigation, school district action, retaliation or reprisal, right to alternative complaint procedures, harassment or violence as abuse, and then dissemination of policy and training. And this policy, under the last section there, shall be reviewed at least annually for compliance with state and federal law. And so this is, you'll note there are some notes in here about the revisions from 2023 and 2024 throughout the Minnesota Human Rights Act. And so this has those revisions in it, just to clarify. So let me see here. Superintendent Magus, were you going to, one thing I would note too then is under section G, it does have, let me see, where did I see it, under section G? Okay. On reporting procedures, section G then, it states the school board hereby designates Teresa Severance, Executive Director of Human Resources and Operations, as a school district human rights officer to receive reports or complaints of harassment or violence prohibited by this policy. If the complaint involves a human rights officer, the complaint shall be filed directly with the superintendent. So I just wanted to note that. And
Chair Loeffler-Kemp, as long as you just mentioned that, is that standard policy to really name? So if Director Severance leaves that job, we have to come back and redo this? Mm-hmm. I've noticed other school districts don't. They just say the HR director and don't put the name, but I don't have a problem with it. I just know that in other policies that we've had, we've left the name off so that we don't have to revisit it.
I think that there are a handful of policies that require the name of a particular individual, and usually it's when it has to do with a complaint process. So there are a couple that list Assistant Superintendent Anthony Bonds, and a couple that list Executive Director Teresa Severance. But I think between first and second reading, we could double check on that too, because I agree it's nice to have it list the title of the position rather than the name. But I think in this particular instance, because it's a complaint procedure process, we have to list the name.
I would respond just that it's nice to have the name, because in these areas of harassment and violence, you don't want anyone to feel that complicated. Like if you have the name of the person instead of just the human rights, if you have just if you have the director of HR, you're not real sure how you would connect with them. If you put Director Severance's name and her email, it makes it clear to someone who might need this policy at a time that could be stressful. But I did notice it just in that sometimes we don't list the name, so we don't have to continue to change the policy, which also means that Director Severance should be staying with us for the duration of her career.
And as already been discussed, there are a number of policies that have came through where it's either required or we want the name in there. So that's been practice. Superintendent Magus, do you want to walk
Sure.
through this policy, please?
I can start, and I know that Becca or Ms. Lester is going to share more as well on behalf of Director Severance. But so basically, this policy is, it's interesting with the title, and because of harassment and violence, but then it goes into the particular type of harassment and violence, and I think that it's based on the Minnesota law that basically says in Minnesota, workplace harassment and discrimination are illegal and covered by the Minnesota Human Rights Act, and so I think this is largely based in the Human Rights Act. The MHRA prohibits discrimination in employment, housing, public accommodations, public services, education, credit, and businesses based on various protected classes. So it's, even though we, of course, are against violence and harassment in any shape or form, this is particular to protected classes of race, religion, disability, national origin, sex, marital status, familial status, age, sexual orientation, and gender identity. To have a valid claim, the harassment or discrimination must be based on the protected characteristic. So that's why this calls out, because it's about harassment or violence based on the protected class. And so that basically the behavior must be severe or persuasive enough to alter the terms or conditions of employment, or the employer should have known or must have known about the harassment and failed to take corrective action. So I would say, and I know there was a question about the customization of the purpose, and I think we could also make a statement, if we wanted to, saying something to the effect of Duluth Public Schools is, strongly against harassment and violence, or continually, strives to seek a harassment and violence-free environment, and then go into the purpose of the policy. So we could make a general statement about harassment and violence if we wanted to capture that harassment and violence in general is bad, of course, and then go into the other part. That could be something we do. Yeah, so that would be something that if we wanted to customize that purpose statement. And I know that was kind of one of the first questions that came up. So before we go deep into the policy, do we want to talk about the purpose statement, or do we want to go through the policy first and then talk about the purpose?
I would just add is that in talking with Terry Morrow from NSBA, under the purpose, we can localize it if we want. I like that idea myself of putting a strong Duluth Public Schools statement and then this purpose. So that's my comment. I'm looking at your lights before calling on you.
I think I would like to walk through it all and then maybe come back around and see if, after having further discussion about all the parts.
Great, that makes sense. So Superintendent Magus, do you want to start, or Becca?
Becca, are you prepared to?
Okay, great.
Yes, it's just as Superintendent Magus said, that the specificity of 413 is about the Minnesota Human Rights Act and how it categorizes different protected classes and different protected classes under harassment and discrimination. We do have another complaint that is separate from the harassment policy. That's policy 103, complaints, students, employees, parents, and other persons, that I believe was updated August 15th, 2023. So that is more of our general complaint, not associated with the harassment complaint, where that is, like Superintendent Magus said, a protected class. Thank you.
Sure. So then, if we go through the general statement of policy, it talks about the, as we've talked about a little bit, that it's about harassment and violence based on protected class. It talks about who might be involved under Part B. It also, under Part C, talks about if a violation of the policy occurs. basically what happens at that point. And then also that the district, Part D is that the district needs to investigate. Then there are a set of definitions with assault, what is considered assault, what is considered harassment. And I think that that's part of where, like again, the protected class is, in order for it to be considered harassment under this policy, it has to be based on the protected class. It has to be creating an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. It has to have substantially or unreasonably interfere with the individual's ability to work or their academic performance. And again, that's reiterated under the Minnesota harassment and discrimination policy. And then adversely impact, oh, I already said that, sorry. Otherwise adversely impact the individual's employment or academic opportunities. Immediate means has to be within 24 hours. Goes into defining what disability is, what family status is, what marital status, national origin, sex, or sexual orientation are, as well as status regard to public assistance. And then it talks about the remedial response. Basically, what is it that we would be doing to remediate the situation? Section F talks about sexual harassment and what sexual harassment is and how it's defined. And I think that we've talked about this sometimes when it comes to some of the subcomponents of the policy. We want to make sure that we stay with what is stated from MSBA, but if there was something we wanted to change, which we have sometimes, then we usually seek a little bit of legal counsel just to make sure that it doesn't change the tone enough where it has legal implication. Then Part F2 is talking a little bit more about sexual harassment and what it includes. Sexual violence is Part G, defines that in detail. And then violence is pretty clear and simple definition of violence under Part H. Under reporting procedures, it talks about, under Section A, basically that anybody that is believing that they've been a target should report and how they should report. B talks about encouraging the reporting party to use the report form that's available. And then C talks about the basically, what takes place as far as the reporting and the notes. D talks about in what happens in each of our school buildings and who's involved as well. So basically in each school building is D, and then E is talking about others who might be involved, and this also would have to do with volunteers. It's not just employees, but volunteers, contractors, or other school employees. It talks about what needs to happen within 24 hours under Section F with the report, so we need to take all reports seriously. And then again, as far as the district piece, it talks about who is responsible from a district perspective. And again, that highlighted part does specifically list Teresa Severance and goes into detail there. And then talks more through that section about what is that process from a district perspective. Section 5 lays out what investigation should take place. And then Section 6 is about school district action and what should happen from that point. 7 is basically reiterating that there should be no retaliation or reprisal for claims that are made, that we need to take that extremely seriously. There's a right to alternative complaint procedures, and I think sometimes that comes into play if there's, if people are feeling like the normal avenues of complaint are not what it would normally be followed. And I'm thinking about like if there were a complaint against the person who was supposed to investigate or something along those lines, that there are alternatives for that complaint procedure. Section 9 is regarding harassment or violence as abuse and defines abuse there. Section 10 talks about the policy training that we need, and then there are legal references and cross-references that we have. Anything that you would add, Becca?
No, thank you.
Thank you for that review, Superintendent Magus. So I'll open it up for questions. I had, I guess, just a couple comments first, though, that I guess I feel really strongly about keeping Teresa Severance's name in here. And under the reporting procedures, it also does touch on, I don't think that's where it has to be, but does note again on B and C in terms of the reporting and who to go to. So I think having a name, I think, is really important. This is just kind of a general question. In my former work, I used to do a lot of sexual harassment training in the late 80s and early 90s, and I'm just curious, can you share a little bit how we provide training to our staff around sexual harassment?
And I'm wishing that Teresa was here. I know that we have various required trainings, but I would have to look into it and go into greater detail. But it looks like what I was actually going to do is refer it on to Director Jason Crane.
Okay, well, he's making his way up here. I just wanted to also mention, under the legal references and cross-references, again, listed is Minnesota Statute 63A, which is the Minnesota Human Rights Act. So, that's one of the legal references that, as Superintendent Meggs touched on when he was talking about the purpose. I just want to make sure it's there if you want to click on that at any point to learn more. Thank you, Mr. Crane. The question was about training.
Green means on, right? Yeah, so this is similar to the policy that I'm going to speak about, the 525. They kind of overlap each other, and they reference training not only for staff, but for students. And I spoke last month about Vector and Infinitec, our two online platforms. And I'll just read you some of the titles of the Vector training that we offered our staff from last fall. Child abuse, mandatory reporting, digital citizenship, general safety orientation, health emergencies, restraint and seclusion, conflict management. Then I referenced Infinitec as over 100 similar type training venues, and I think we pushed that to the school board through Patty. I packaged a little training about how you could log in and create your own account, and the students can do that. Parents can do that with some of our platforms, especially Infinitec. Vector is more for staff, but Infinitec is an opportunity for lots of people to go on and peruse their menu of opportunity for training. And both products are always updating their venues. I don't think a video goes more than 2 years without a refresh. Make sense? We do a lot of in-person stuff too on staff development days, but that's some of our very comprehensive training programs. And I'll highlight that when you do that, you have to pass a quiz. So you have to pass it with competency.
The Vector training also has intermediate quiz questions too, so it's not like you can just press play on the whole thing and go through it. It asks questions periodically throughout the training as well. I know that probably we have a limit of access and time with professional learning, but we believe this is important. So some of the trainings that we have that are meant as assurance that we're training everybody, we are doing through Vector, and so it's probably not as good as if we were doing like an in-person training, but it's helpful to know that it's what would you call it, compliance-based training, I guess I would probably refer to it as.
Okay, appreciate that. And then just again, in 10, it does say that the policy appears in the student handbook. The district will develop a method of discussing this policy with students and employees. And then again, I mentioned this before, reviewed at least annually for compliance with state and federal law. Member Michaelsell?
I'd like to learn a little bit more about the actual reporting mechanisms. So I know that in reporting procedures, so section 4, D, when it talks about in each school building, one, the policy is going to be posted somewhere, But then also, people are able to either give a written or verbal report to the head of that site. Where are the forms kept? When I look online to see if we can find, where those forms are kept online, I did find our harassment form included on our bullying and harassment webpage. And it's all the way down at the bottom. What can you share about the reporting process?
Do you have more to share? But I can, just in general, we keep the forms at each site, and having been a principal, we kept them in the front of the office, and there was a particular area, and we had to make sure that everybody knew where the forms were, and so that's what we did. But if there's more you can add about Duluth-specific procedures, that'd be great.
Yes, the forms are available at each site, and Executive Director Severance and I were just talking the other day about how to move where the forms are on the website currently to have it be more HR focused and easier to find. I myself did not know they were on the bullying section. I usually find them under families, under forms at the top, and then go from there. We have been trying to go paperless, but not take away that avenue from other people who might like to have a piece of paper, sit down, have a conversation. We're just trying to expedite how quickly we can respond to each complaint, and we can respond to different general complaints or harassment complaints a lot quicker online. So while, yes, there are still paper forms available, under that family's forms, it goes straight to a Google form that myself, Director Severance, Assistant Superintendent Bonds, and his executive assistant Shannon, that we all have access to. So we are able to pull that data very quickly and respond to complaints very quickly. But yes, we are talking about moving that to a more HR centered focus on the website, so it's not so hard to find.
Great, thank you. One thing I also noticed in our policy, it states that anonymous reports are accepted, although they might not necessarily cause an investigation. But I notice on our online reporting form, it requires the name and contact information of the reportee, or reporter, I guess. And so I wasn't sure if there was some reasons behind that, or if there's needed to be a different discussion around that.
Yeah, I would think it would be, I mean, I think we have to have some degree of knowledge of credibility in order to investigate. If somebody just blanket sends things in without any notice, it's hard for us to know the credibility of it, and it can also be, defaming in nature, and so we wanted to make sure that we're taking it seriously. If somebody is coming in and anonymously reporting or making a phone call or something, I think that's more serious, but I'm not sure if there's more you want to share there, Becca.
And I know the policy itself says that a person may report conduct that may constitute harassment or violence anonymously. However, the school district may not rely solely on an anonymous report to determine discipline or other remedial responses. So just making sure that's out there.
I'll have to look into that discrepancy a little bit more, and if you can take that in just as far as the difference between the two, and I can get back to you.
Or I don't know how the functionality of submit would work, but I would think that if someone wanted to do anonymous, they would just put no comment or anonymous on that form, but then I don't know if that form would submit. But maybe that's what our assumption is that someone who does not want to use their name would use that form, but just say, I have the right to stay anonymous or something.
Yes, like Superintendent Magus said, we can always talk with Director Severance about the functionality of it, because like the policy says we can't solely go off of it, but that doesn't mean that even if it was anonymous or somebody said no comment, that it wouldn't be investigated. We still would, maybe if they don't want to be interviewed or questioned about it. And that's something that I can talk with Director Severance about to see if we need to adjust, based on what we find out, if we need to adjust the compliancy of the form. Because I can easily go in and correct that.
Great, and we are going to be reviewing the form at the end in the other, well, we can do it right now, actually, being we're talking about it. It's informational, the form, but, so let's wait with that, and just any other general questions about, and again, this is the first reading of this policy. Any other general questions about the policy itself? Member Lofold?
Just a thank you for all of the work on this. And my question really is about the redlined 413. So was this the policy that was on our policy, and then we're going to this? So this is quite I read through this as much as I could. The language is pretty similar, but just this looks, was 413 an MSBA guided attempt, or is this our work with the legislative change? I mean, I think there's been a lot of information given, a lot of clarification given by the legislature and by MSBA at the top of the one you gave us today.
Yeah, that's fine. It probably just came from MSBA that way, but we delete that part anyway.
Okay,
It's just
okay.
on there because
Okay.
that's the template that they use.
Thank you. Any other questions? Member Michaelsell?
So now moving on to a little bit more of a global, discussion about first the title of it, harassment and violence. Whenever I see something written like that, I'm like, is it a policy that tells us how to harass and be violent? Was there some consideration of possibly changing that to prohibiting harassment and violence, or just putting an action to it? I'll leave that there. But then second, I'm trying to remember, and having just skimmed through some of our other policies on violence prevention and student discipline and in the handbook, I don't know if sexual harassment and sexual assault is as clearly defined in any of those other policies as it is in this one. And because of that, I wonder if we should either be adding that into some of those other ones, because I assume we don't want anyone to be sexually harassed or be sexually assaulted, even if they're not in a protected class. Or another, something else I was considering is for this policy, while that's very much focused on people who are being harassed or having violence against them because they are in a protected class, possibly including or expanding out the purpose to state that, harassment and violence is not acceptable to the public schools, including harassment and violence because someone is in a protected class. I'm not sure if I'm voicing that, I'm articulating that very well, but I just worry that that section about sexual harassment, sexual assault might not be included anywhere else, and wanting to make sure that that's something that's understood is not acceptable against anyone, not just people who might be in one of these protected classes.
I think as far as the inclusion of the other components into those other policies, I think it would be good for us to double check with legal counsel just to see if that changes the nature of any of those policies. I don't see where it would. I mean, I don't see a problem with it personally, but I think that making sure that we have that guidance would be important. But I agree with you that expanding the purpose so that we say something more, strongly based, something like harassment and violence of any kind or towards any individual are not permitted within Duluth Public Schools. The purpose, and then go into the purpose of this policy is something, and I'm not sure exactly how we want to word it, but I'm sure something along those lines would be clearer to people. As far as the title, I think I love semantics, and I agree, like having an action, prohibition of harassment and violence makes sense, but then there's also the standardization and wanting to keep with the MSBA policy names and things like that too, that would be a factor. I'm not sure that outweighs the wanting to make it clearer for people, but that would be something that I would think we would want to consider a bit.
Member Lofold?
do we not have, I would find it hard to believe that we don't have a separate policy that addresses sexual harassment as a harassment?
In our violence prevention policy that we're going to do second reading for, or third reading for today,
Yep,
it does mention that sexual harassment is not allowed, but it's not as detailed defined as it is in this policy, where it gets into like what specific actions are considered sexual harassment. So, and that I could find, so I didn't.
But knowing, yeah. I just remember forms when I was in the classroom. I remember the forms that clearly had on it about sexual harassment as part of the form that you would look at. And then to your early question too, just from my experience at Denfeld, and I'm sure it's the same in most schools, either it's in your mailroom where everything is delivered, there's usually a stackable thing and it has all the forms that pertain to it. And then I don't know if we have access or if it's different. Becca might be able to, or any of you could tell me, is I know that there's a staff side of the website and there's a public side of the website. So what we see as a public, even though public people need to know where the forms are, but if it's concerning employees, isn't a lot of our forms then would also be on the staff portal? I don't know. That might be.
Becca, do you want to speak to that, or?
Yes, I can. So the forms that are typically on the staff side of the website are going to be things that are for employees, like invoice reimbursements or mileage or things like that. But the harassment and complaint forms are on the public-facing side of the website. I believe they'd also be on the staff side too. I'd have to look into that a little bit. And like I said earlier, Teresa and I are working on collaborating about moving those forms on the website so they are on the public-facing HR. When people come to see the HR page, they'll be able to find that because they're going to typically go to us first.
I have one more question.
Go ahead.
I think my last question. So I know we have a harassment reporting form that the public, so meaning students or staff, are able to access. I know we have a bullying report form. I know we have a general complaint form. Where does violence get reports go? Do those go on the general complaints? Because on the harassment form, it's very much only harassment, it appears. Bullying is open-ended questions, but that might not necessarily, act of violence might not necessarily be bullying. So I just wasn't sure if our policy states that there's a report form for violence reporting, and to make sure we have that.
Yeah, I haven't been in a district or school system that has a separate violence report. I think generally it would be reported through the normal, like behavioral referrals or a staff investigation. If a staff member punches somebody or something, that would be a separate human resources investigation. So I think that those are handled through other avenues of investigation. I think that harassment and bullying, because they sometimes tend to be more complicated in nature, and because sometimes they're swept under the carpet, and I'm not saying here, but just in general in society, I think that that's why harassment and bullying have societally and across school systems been called out for greater documentation, because violence is something that is seen as something that is more easily reportable and easier to, it's a little more clear cut sometimes as far as what's occurred. That would be my guess at this point, but I think we would need to double check to make sure that there isn't a separate violence report. But I think, as far as I know from human resources, it would be the same, that it would be reported through the normal mechanisms of complaint or behavior.
Anything in addition you want to say about that, Ms. Lewis? Okay, just giving you that opportunity, okay. Okay, so This is our first reading. We talked about adding a statement under the purpose, just one general statement from the Duluth Public Schools. I kind of liked what you said, John. It was pretty short and straightforward, so something of that. But you'll bring that forward for our second reading. And then, let's see, the only other piece in terms of any changes to this word, are we in agreement we want to keep Teresa's Severance's name in there? I think I was getting a sense we all agreed on that on the reporting. So keep that as is. And then we can talk a little bit more about the reporting form, but I just wanted to kind of capture what was talked about in the discussion on the policy itself. Did I miss anything?
No, just double checking to make sure that there's consensus to the changing the purpose in that way. Would that capture what you're hoping? So something to the effect of harassment and violence of any kind towards any individual is not permitted within the Duluth Public Schools, and then go into we'll make some strong statement to that regard.
Is everyone in agreement with that? Okay.
Thanks.
I guess the other thing that was talked about briefly is changing the name, and I guess I haven't looked at all policies in every district, but it seems like most districts just keep it that direct, harassment and violence, and so I guess kind of concur with Superintendent Magus says about keeping it, but we can, if someone feels strongly about that, we could check on and you were going to check legally on that, right? Okay. Okay. Great. Thank you. Member Lofold?
Just on that comment, if you look at, and I like just the harassment and violence, I think we get it, but in the 413 that we're deleting, it says prohibiting, harassment and violence, which it gets to what Member Mike Sell was kind of referring to, but I'm fine with just harassment and violence as the title, but the other ones do have that. I don't mind that either.
I like it better, just as a former English teacher, prohibiting harassment and violence, but if we want to keep it standardized with MSBA, that's input factors, whatever is the pleasure of the board.
Well, I think it would be good if you, just checked legally to see if there's anything we should be thinking about. Yeah. Because again, even though it did say prohibited here, this policy's old.
Right.
And this is the most up-to-date, and so.
And I didn't comment earlier when we asked about the differences between the policies, but I think so much has changed
Yes.
with reporting on harassment and violence in the past 10 years that's why things are so carefully or much more thoughtfully defined and articulated as opposed to previously where it was just a general statement.
And then just, highlighting again, and it says this throughout the policy, but the changes that are in here are changes from the 2023 legislature, as well as with the Minnesota Human Rights Act, as well as 2024. So the revised definitions. Any other comments on the policy itself? Okay. Then why don't we just jump to, even though because we've been touching on the harassment complaint form. And again, this is really more for informational for us, but is there anything in addition people want to provide comments on? Member Michaelsell?
The only thing I wanted to mention is that in our purpose, we talk about familial status being a protected class, and that's not reflected on the report form.
That would be good to include. So to the point about, do we have a specific form for violence? The report form is called harassment complaint form, but then under the statement of complaint, it says include types of harassment/violence. So I'm almost wondering if maybe we should call this a harassment/violence report, and then it would accomplish what you were referring to earlier.
I was going to actually recommend that, so I would be in agreement with that, that we just add harassment/violence.
And since that's an internal form, there's no problem with changing it.
Any other comments on the form? Do you see a problem with that? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Lewis. And any other comments on it? Obviously, on the left-hand corner, once we revise this, everything, the renumbering and all of that will match the revision. Okay, thank you. Thank you all for taking this really seriously. This is a very important policy.
It is, and I think, again, this stands with our tone and philosophy of making sure that everyone is protected within our schools. And I think sometimes when things are being challenged more frequently related to things like sexual orientation or gender identity, this is based on Minnesota law. It's not our opinion as a school district. It is our opinion as a school district. It's what we believe in, but I'm saying it's not something that is just us saying what we believe. It's based on the Minnesota Human Rights Act, and so I think it's important for us to affirm that and keep things aligned.
Thank you. We will go back then to our policies for second reading, policy 525. And again, this is actually our third reading of this policy. And policy 525, violence prevention. And I'm just going to read the updated purpose that came out of our earlier discussions on it. The purpose, this policy acknowledges that violence is a critical issue for schools to address. The Duluth School District will establish and implement measures to ensure a safe and disruptive-free learning environment for all students and staff. The school board is committed to promoting healthy human relationships and learning environments that are physically and psychologically safe for all members of the school community. It further believes that students are the first priority and they should be protected from physical or emotional harm doing school activities and on school grounds, buses, or field trips while under school district supervision. And I did ask Mr. Crane just to kind of walk through again the changes as we've been walking through, recognizing that Member Lofold wasn't here last month as well. So just to make sure we're all hearing the changes. So thank you again, Mr. Crane.
So I kind of have laid out in front of me all of our changes from each month that we went through. And I just want to start by saying we started on this policy in 2024, probably in November. We started reflecting with some of our groups, including our safety committees, working with Todd McGowan, Lexi Neff, lots of individuals. We brought this information to the principal group to reflect on it with us. Even before we came in March, we were working on this policy for several months. And you're right, Member Laffer-Kemp, that legislative changes have really ramped up this policy to the beefiness that it is. It correlated to policy 5022, which was adopted in 2004, so 21 years ago. Was the violence notification policy. And that one really focused on notifying staff and individuals in the school setting and when you had a violent student in your school building. But this policy is much more comprehensive, which acknowledges that we don't want to see violence in the school. How can we prevent it? How can we teach staff and students? And all that teaching component wasn't a part of 5022. And it's really nice the way that this policy currently sits. We did some recommendations based upon our board's questions, and if you're looking at the board book premiere, there's several versions of it listed, but the top one dated 4/11/25 is the most current yellow highlighted edits that we made from the recommendations of last meeting. So Lafleur read the purpose, and for a while there, we didn't have that top statement in the purpose, and we did some tweaking along that one because it had a word, I think it said increased violence, and we really wanted to desensitize that because in Duluth Public Schools, we maintain a pretty flat level of violence in our school building, which has been relatively low. I don't want to jinx anything, but we haven't seen major incidences of violence in our school building. We haven't had a death in our school building related to a violent incident, so that's been nice for Duluth Public Schools. Any questions about the purpose statement and the changes that we made or anything else not yet added? Okay. Down below, there was a request to add the outline in ISD 709 handbook to include like specifics about what is assault. And it's described very eloquently in our student handbook under level 4 conduct. And under level 4 conduct, there's about 12 different incidences, including a weapons in the school building, including a serious fight situation could rise to the level of assault. And that was added because there was some requests for extra specificity about what is assault and or violence in the school setting. Any questions about why that was added? There were some great recommendations to include cross-reference as policy 506 under G has been added because this policy really does highlight all the different areas that the state statute has been increased to include a lot of things. All these things also show up in our student handbooks. The state statutes are referenced in our student handbooks, and we have to take this policy very seriously to make sure that we implement all the training for not only students and staff for next year that we have opportunities to do. We've been doing some of those, but we're actually going to increase some of that, especially for student contact. I envision we're going to need to create kind of a menu for the whole school year of when we have opportunities to teach our kids about how to prevent this, how to respond to this in the school setting, and make sure that we do that in a respectful, safe way as well. We have no other questions on that area. I think there was one more on the back under, gotta keep them all straight, prevention strategies, and there's a lot of them. Under T, we added promoting safe storage of gun in accordance with school board resolution and safe storage of weapons. And we took off the at home or in school grounds because we really wanted it to be in all of our school grounds. And please know that we did a lot of networking with groups like our TRAP team. They do not bring any weapons on our school property. They do not store them in their trunks waiting for practice after school. Those weapons, if anything, are transported by the coach if need be, and the coach does not come on school property. He goes from his home, he's not a school district employee, to the TRAP site. I think they practice at Proctor for the Denfeld team, and then they practice somewhere up near Island Lake area for the East team, and they never come on school grounds. So that was refreshing to hear. We also had some questions about, is there anything in our community ed calendar and or DNR use our school facilities? They do not. So we don't have any community ed offerings to bring weapons into our school building and train for classes. There are no weapons coming into the Duluth Public Schools to my knowledge. That was refreshing. And the last thing is, I thought there was one more, Patty, about where we store our statement about weapons, that the resolution. Did we not add that to the policy, or we just?
Well, there wasn't the statement, but the under. Sorry.
It popped in my head that I thought we had some questions about that.
Under, where is it? Violence prevention, sorry. I skimmed past it, now I'm not seeing. Okay, under section, it's a long section. Under section 4T, the last one before section 5.
Board resolution, there it is, yep.
Right.
That's that, and that is stored in the superintendent's office, and that was a request to add that we do that annually, right, Patty?
And there was a question about section T, if we should change it, maybe with, instead of, basically, we just took off at home and school grounds, just because we should have safe gun storage no matter where it is, right? And so whether it's in a vehicle or whether it's in, I mean, hopefully not on school grounds, but we just thought that keeping it a little more general would be all-encompassing.
And we had a request, the last one was 5D, to add restorative practices, relationship skills. We are doing that. That's part of the second step and other programming that Todd McGowan kind of oversees throughout our school district. So great recommendation to add that statement in there. Just a last comment that you'll notice there's a lot of different cross-references, and expect to see in the future months some things like our 501 school weapons policy will come before you, because we've been working on some of those in recent years. Some of them were adopted maybe 3 years ago, but the legislation has changed a few of the areas in some of those, so those policies are going to be coming forward in the next few months.
With the cross-references, just as an example, the first one is Model Policy 413, harassment and violence. So we would have to keep in mind, if we want to add prohibition of harassment and violence, that we'd want to make sure that in all of our cross-sections that we appropriately name it as well.
So I appreciate that this did take 3 months. It was great that it took 3 months, actually, because I think we got it right.
I just, a couple points. Yeah, thank you for all your work on this, Jason, and the many other staff across the district that have been involved. I was just, back to the resolution. Are we going to hyperlink or whatever it's called, the resolution someplace, so it's not just kind of standing there saying school board resolution without people having any direction to what our resolution is? Did I misunderstand?
That was my question I was going to ask. I was going to ask for clarity of what you wanted. The resolutions are in our board book for when they're on the school board agendas, so people can search on board book for the resolution. Otherwise, we have paper copies of all the resolutions in the superintendent's office. So I can add a line on there to have them go to a hyperlink to board book, and or that they can contact the superintendent's office if they want a copy, or what would you suggest? That's what I was going to ask if you guys, I knew you were discussing where they were located. I wasn't clear on if you wanted a sentence added and the wording you wanted added, so that's what I'm asking now.
Thoughts?
Excuse me. I mean, to keep it even easier, you might not even need to reference the school board resolution. I mean, granted, I would love for our members of our public to go and see the resolution that was adopted by the school board back in, was it 2022? You know, because I assume it has some good information that people would learn about, some violence prevention strategies in there. But if having a link to it is clumsy within the policy, or if not having it in some other space where people can easily access it, you know, removing that resolution and just making it into policy that says that going forward, Duluth Public Schools will share information about safe and secure storage of firearms as a violence prevention strategy also would work in my mind, but open to discussion.
Member Lofold?
So just a couple of questions come to mind. It makes the reference that we, or at least in my mind, it's like we revisit this school board resolution every year, and I'm not so sure we have. I'm not saying we shouldn't, but is that something that we wait for the community to ask us, or is it something, is there a month that would make sense to always have that? So that's one question. The second question would be, if that is something the entire board wants to do, then I think you could put the resolution on the school board's website, right there, just a document that you could click on. It would open up to that resolution that also then has the information about safe storage, or a link to that. I don't know. I don't know how far we,
I was going to say, yeah, we did do the last one in May of 2024. We usually do it in May because it references that the first, there's the date in June.
Saturday in June, yeah.
Yeah, like the
Not
first
to interrupt,
Saturday.
Patty, but those are two different resolutions that you're
Oh,
speaking
okay.
of. So there was one in November of, I believe, 2022. That
Okay.
was only about educating our parents and guardians about secure storage of firearms at home and wherever they have them. And then it seems that yearly, we also passed a resolution recognizing National Gun Violence Awareness Day. And that also mentions that the school district will, attempt to do what it can, working with community partners to reduce gun violence in our community. But I believe that the resolution that was being referenced in the violence prevention policy was the resolution that was passed by the school board a few years ago, saying that information about secure firearm storage would be shared with parents and guardians on a routine basis throughout the year. And I don't know if it's something that, I need to look into the definition of resolution, if it's something that has to be upped annually every year in order to be kept active, or if by adding it to policy, which then gets reviewed at least every 3 years, this policy, I believe, is going to be every 1 year, puts the eyes of the school board on it every year, and it can be adjusted as necessary in the future.
Yeah, I have a couple of things I can share with that. I'll look up that resolution from November 2022. I don't think you need to do it annually. I think the reason why we do the other one is because the date of June changes, so that's why we do that one annually. And then as we're discussing this now, I'm thinking I can probably have it in a Google Doc and have it just link directly to the Google Doc. So I'll look up that resolution, I'll get it in a Google Doc platform, and then I will add a sentence that shows that they can go to the link and they'll be able to find it. Does that sound good?
Yep, that sounds good. Thank you for problem solving with us, Patty. There. Does that sound good for everybody? Okay, excellent, thank you. Let me see, there was one other thing I was going to highlight with this. I know the other place there were some questions and we reviewed, but I just think we just if there's any new information, I guess, on the preventive strategies. We talked N, O, and P, N being develop a student photo or name identification system for a quick identification of the student in case of emergency. And you shared with us that students can opt out of the photo. So you shared that. And then, go ahead.
Infinite Campus is the system that you use right now for student identification. It's our information system that has the photo, has information about students, and yes, the student could miss the photo day or choose to opt out of a picture.
Okay. And I think we discussed O. Is there anything else under P about visitor check-ins at the main office that, just for informational purposes, we'd want to share?
Well, last month I reported that we've had some dramatic changes in Duluth Public Schools. We have buzz-in access now, and there is a person that people need to check in with. You can't just randomly walk into any school building. 10, 15 years ago, you could walk in the back door, and the back doors, once the school day starts, are secure, and you have to go through a welcome area, meet with a designated person, like at Denfeld High School. They have a separate person. It's not the clerical person. It's somebody else that is a greeter. And at the elementary sites, it may be the lead clerical that has to buzz people in and welcomes them. And there's sign-in sheets too, a tremendous amount of security prevention and identification with people signing in, making sure that you wear a badge around the building so people can identify you as a visitor. So those things have all radically increased with safety awareness in Duluth schools.
Yep, and I know you stress that, and I know we've had many trainings from our safety staff. Is there additional training that is happening with our students in terms of not them letting in anybody in the buildings?
We have opportunities through formerly called WIN. Elementary still has WIN. What is Denfeld called? Their secondary thing now where it's kind of like a homeroom check-in, but opportunity days. Some of those days they have planned informational sessions where the teachers have to deliver the content, and that's a part of the content. Actually, many of our school buildings have a increase of student attendance project right now, where the staff, I was at Denfeld the other day, and they had changed some of the routines that for lunch, there's staff posted at the exit doors to go out of the building, and the students can't leave without, and they find the assistant principal there, they turn around, they come back in the building. So,
Okay, that's great. I think I would just say with that we just, because we get students throughout the school year, so it's one of those trainings that can't just happen once, right? We might get them at the middle of the year, and if they missed it in the fall. So I know that's just one that's came to my attention. Any other comments on this third reading? Are we feeling like we're ready to move this?
I have one comment.
Okay, go
When you were
ahead.
talking about visitors, I just wanted to bring to your attention that 903, visitors to our school district buildings and site, is another policy that's currently being worked on, so you can see it coming forth in the next couple months.
903?
Yep, visitors to school district buildings and sites. So when we were talking about that, I thought that would be important for you to know that that will be coming up. They've been really working hard on that one, too.
Great, 903. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And along with that, thinking about our efforts for improving systems, safety is, of course, one of our top priorities, if not the top priority. And focus on safety improvement is something that we've been really honing in on more over the course of the past few years. And also making sure that we have some limited flexibility based on sites and what the needs are, but also some pretty significant standardization of what we see across our sites. Example would be, we just built a new fence around the Lester Park playground, and we wanted to make sure that we had consistency there. We've also sometimes had requests from different schools, parent groups or things like that want to add additional security or systems that aren't part of our review, and that's something that we're at this point not encouraging. We of course are always looking at ideas, but we need to make sure that they fit within our safety planning and our prioritization there as well. We don't want to have a PTA fundraising to have a security guard or something like that. I'm just putting that out there. We just want to make sure that we have safety as our top priority, and I think we'll see more of that when that policy comes through.
Thank you. And I know one of our recent presentations from around safety did talk about the importance of standardized entrances and different things for a number of reasons. And that was really a valuable training, I think, for us as board members to have. Okay, so we will bring this forward. Again, thank you, Director Crane, for all your work on this. The last policy then, and again, this is a policy for review, and a piece of it is renumbering it from 726, and so it's 7070, the bidding process, but renumbering it to 726. And are you ready? Okay.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce Kathy Holman. She's our purchasing coordinator and is very instrumental in all of this. I asked her to look through all of this as well. She does the work every day. And then we got some great questions today. So we can walk through this. Kathy already came down and realized we have another piece to add on this, so I'll talk about that at the end. So our purpose, do you want me to read the whole thing and go through it, or will you do that?
I'll just read
Perfect.
and then you can go.
Thank you.
Is it just that one paragraph, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Purpose. Bids, RFPs, and quotes are a thing to ensure fair competition and transparency in the procurement process. Suppliers and/or contractors are invited to submit bids or proposals meeting predetermined specifications. This allows for evaluation of pricing and criteria to select the most suitable vendor. And it was, and it says it was last revised in 1995.
It's time. Yeah. When did you start in purchasing?
When did I?
Yes, 1995. Yeah. So the next highlighted paragraph is called bids, RFPs, quotes, specifications. Specifications must be drawn and bids solicited for any work to be performed under contract or for the purchase of material and supplies of $175,000 or more. RFPs/bids are obtained for contracts from $25,000 to $174,999, and quotes must be secured if the contract is $24,999 or less. The deputy clerk of the school board shall receive all bids and/or RFPs and shall report the findings to the school board. The school board shall then indicate its decision on bids and/or RFPs received at an official meeting of the school board. So the change we made in that paragraph is we added the word deputy. Before it had the clerk, so we added the deputy. Do we have any questions on that paragraph? Okay.
Are you the deputy?
I
No.
am the
Yeah,
deputy.
okay.
Yes, so that works. Under advertising and soliciting, at first there was a request or possible request to remove us publishing because it's a costly expense. But we worked with our attorney and the attorney said, no, it needs to be published. So we are keeping that language. All bids shall be advertised through the business and finance office of the school district. The official media for advertising is the Duluth News Tribune. Additional notifications shall be included in other appropriate publications. Kathy, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Well, if you're curious as to what that last sentence means, when we work with, for instance, our design tree or ICS companies, they have certain trade websites that they will put their bids or RFPs on. And so we were, of course, looking for cost savings. So we thought, maybe that will cover our advertising as well. But legally, we do have to advertise in a publication, and of course, ours would be the Duluth News Tribune. So, and then, of course, there are the time constraints, of which we'll address a little bit later on, but, so.
Thank you. Okay, our next paragraph is plans and specifications. Subsequent to the approval by the school board, plans for the project shall be dispersed to interested bidders by the architect. 2 sets of working plans and specifications shall be delivered to the Director of Business and Finance. The word architect is really, I would say, our facilities manager. And that is language that's probably been there since 1995. Are we comfortable with leaving the word architect in there? I believe it is, yeah, it comes up again under time for preparation of bids. It's not always going to be the facilities manager. I mean, sometimes it would be you, right?
Well, yes, sorry. So there are 3 main departments that use the bidding process, and that's our child nutrition, technology, and then facilities. Architect isn't the best word to be used, but you're right, Brian Brown would be for one of them. Peter Graves at this point in the interimship would be for technology. Sheila Oak, she is also with child nutrition. The other thing is through ICS and Design Tree, sometimes they're the ones that will then send the bid out. And so that then changes it as well.
So maybe architect is appropriate, just as a overarching word to explain, I don't know, I could use some guidance here, what would you?
I'm trying to think of what word we might use, but program lead or lead administrator or
Department manager or department?
department manager.
I think department manager might be good.
Member Loeffel, did you have a comment?
I would just think, who is our audience? Because an architect might work if the people that would be looking into potentially doing a bid or a quote or a specification to this district that might ring, but if it's out there and it is a newer business lead or a newer company or just a school board member, architect to me sounds like we are hiring an architect firm, and they're going to be doing something with that. So I like the suggestions of like department lead or department manager or, I don't know, something. Architect makes me, as a school board member, think that it's an architect, that's their job.
Yep, I would be in agreement. Member Michael?
I think one of the issues that we're running up against is that we're pulling this from our 7,000 series, which is titled New Construction. And we're trying to now retrofit this to being all bids and quotes for anything that's over certain amounts of money. And so that architect language is probably due to the construction history of this policy. So if we're in agreement that this is moving outside of only construction, it seems as though we most likely could change that word. Obviously, I'm not a lawyer, but when it comes to like the school district financing of state statute, they don't use the word architect. And then I was just trying to look into the municipal contracting law section of our Minnesota statutes, and I don't necessarily see architect listed in the different descriptions of contracts of different amounts mentioned, but
If it's okay with you, I could, maybe Kathy and I could work on that and come back to you again, because this is a review. So I'd like to make some corrections again to this, so we could come back to with a suggestion, if that's okay with you. Because it does show up again, so we'll talk about that, okay?
May I make one more comment? That, like, for our child nutrition, we're with Upper Lakes Foods for food, for the students, or bakery or dairy. And so the word architect really doesn't fit, so.
We'll
spot on.
come up with a better term there. Okay, so now we're down to time for preparation of bids. Minimum time periods for bidding are established by the Director of Business and Finance and the architect. We'll change that language. Receiving and opening bids, the school board establishes the following guides to, sorry.
Just a quick question. There was a comment on the time for preparation of bids. There was a reference to state statute 123B52 that there needs to be 2 weeks published notice in the official newspaper.
Correct. We were going to, yeah, go ahead, we were going to.
So this paragraph addresses two different things. The time for preparation of bids, the proposed policy says the timing is left up to the Director of Business and Finance and the architect. What we do is we find out the date we want it to go to the school board for signature and approval. And then we go backwards from there. And because then we address the second, where it needs to be published 2 weeks, depending, if it's $175,000 or more of a bid, then it does. If it's not, then it does not need to be in the DNT or Duluth News Tribune. So based on the fact that we go back, we do allow for that 2 weeks if needed. So that was confusing, I guess, in the aspect that it's kind of two different things, but that, I'm hoping that I answered and letting you know that, yeah, the why and that we do allow that 2 weeks when necessary.
My recommendation is that we publish 2 weeks for everything. Then we don't have to piecemeal it. Kathy does that already, but we just go with the 2 weeks.
Yeah, for the $175,000.
For the 175, yeah. Because we don't need to publish for the 75 or under, correct?
$174,999.
Right, we don't have to publish. So we'll put the 2 weeks in there. We'll add that
When
language.
needed, yeah.
Just a couple of minor suggestions. Thinking of terms that we could use instead of architect, maybe like procurement authority or procurement
I like it.
manager or something. Procuring officer could be one, but just I think approving authority, something along those lines. And then just as far as the structure of the policy, thinking about, we have the Roman numeral 1 under purpose, but then maybe if we start a second section after that first paragraph with like, implementation of the policy or something about, so that it delineates what the rest of the policy is, because it wouldn't all be purpose.
Are you talking under the specification, the second paragraph?
Like just before that, yep. So if
Okay.
we had like,
Under the
like in
purpose.
violence prevention, we have section 2 is general statement of policy, but then section 3 was implementation of policy. So
Sure.
maybe if you just have Roman numeral 2, implementation of policy. And then under RF, where we first refer to RFP, I would just spell that out and say, request for proposals, and then have it in parentheses, just so
Okay.
people, sorry.
No, I was actually kind of going to wait till she walked through it to just say, can we have it in more of the format of the
Of
other
course.
policies? So,
Perfect.
which you stated you were going to review again, but
Yes,
I think that would just be helpful for
great.
consistency.
That's a great idea, thank
But I
you.
think content-wise, it's.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Good.
So I'll just keep going, we don't have too much more, and then I have some other comments here. So the deputy clerk, okay, I'm under receiving and opening bids. The school board establishes the following guides to procedure for receiving construction and purchasing bids. The deputy, we added the word deputy clerk, the school board shall designate the time and place for receiving bids. Number 2, the bids will be received, opened, and tabulated in the presence of the following: the deputy clerk, the deputy was added, of the school board, or a person designated by him/her in writing who shall serve as chairman. B, a person designated by the deputy clerk, we added that, to record the minutes, and such minutes shall be reported to the school board at the next regular school board meeting. The purchasing agent or person designated by him or her. The minutes needs to be discussed, because have you ever sat in a bid opening? We have a tabulation sheet, and we have our vendors there, or we open each sealed envelope, and then we record it on tabulation sheet. That is essentially our minutes, because we don't really take a minutes like at a school board meeting. So I think as such minutes, we should be more specific, maybe but we don't even bring the tabulation results here, do we?
No.
No, we
because,
don't.
I mean, so at the bid opening, everyone signs in, so that's kind of my form of minutes, is who was there. And then they open them, but then they do have time to review, so they don't really put the tabulation together until they go back and sit down, but they do announce the totals, so that if any of the vendors are there, then the vendors know pretty much. But again, there is best value procurement, and there are other things to look at, and so they don't just announce right then and there who the winning bidder is.
So I'm struggling with and such minutes shall be reported to the school board, because we don't bring you the tabulation or who was actually in attendance. We just bring you the final result. You trust the procurement team to do the work, and then we bring you the results, yeah.
I'll say what Member Lofold, I think, is thinking about. So I feel like when I look at the consent agenda, especially from our HR Business Committee, we do see all of the different values of those bids. And then we see who was granted the bid. And so, is that what you're speaking of? Okay.
So it's on one sheet, and it says all the 3 or 4 bids, or whoever bid, their name, and then all the dollar amounts. So, I mean, that technically then is the minutes.
Well, and I guess I was seeking some clarity. So when it talks about the receiving and opening of bids, it sounds like there's a 3-person committee from the district who's at those ceremonies? Or, you made it sound very, very formal. And so that sounds like it's a formal process, and then those notes are taken. I'm looking to state statute to try to figure out where the minutes, came from. I don't see it necessarily in our education contracts section, I'm not necessarily seeing the word minutes anywhere in our municipal contracting law section. So it seems as though, unless we need to consult with our law firms, that this might be something that you're able to finagle based on what our practice is, as long as it's meeting the expectations
I
that
think if
are
we.
put upon us.
Correct, if we get, we're bringing you that RFP, the form, that's from Kathy to me, we're presenting it to you, we tell you who bid, what their dollar amounts were, and then who got the bid. So I think that is a great summary of what happened at that meeting.
Letter of memorandum, and that's what I write for you.
So, yeah, she calls it a letter of memorandum, so we could switch the wording to record the letter of memorandum, and such letter of memorandum shall be reported to the school board at the next regular school board meeting. Okay. And then the purchasing agent or person designated by him or her. I think that looks okay. And we have one more paragraph left. So rejection of bids, should the low bidder, 1, have bid in excess of the budget for the project, 2, be determined as not reliable, or 3, have failed to provide the necessary bid security, the bid shall be rejected through school board action upon recommendation of the Business Services Committee. The school board reserves the right to withhold the bidder's good faith guarantee if the bidder fails to meet the conditions of the submitted bid. I think that language is pretty clean. Do you have any questions about that one? No?
I
And
have a
then,
quick question. Sorry,
go
so where does this language come from? Is this state statute? Is this common practice for governmental agencies and how they handle the bidding process?
so I'm going to go back now. That's a great question, thank you. So you have in your great notes referenced the Uniform Municipal Contracting Law. But what our school district goes by is the school district contracting bid laws. So through our attorney and through our auditors, they ask that we use this.
Yep.
As opposed to the municipal law, bidding law, which is for everybody and for everything. We have one specifically to schools. Okay, so I wanted to make sure that's clear.
So that should be referenced someplace, and it's
We-
not.
Yes, that's why Kathy pulled this for me. We'd like to put this in there and reference that's, you know, what we're working on. And as far as, what? Oh, yeah, sure. Okay, it's clean. So the rejection of bids, I don't know that there's actual, I'm going to talk to our attorney about that, but even where I came from, that, I mean, this is old language that's been around a long time, but that is general language for rejection that I've used before as well in my former district. I'll find out for us. We just got these questions today, so I'll find out for us if that is, you know, tied to specific language. I know, Sarah, you brought up what it's called DB 7233, withdrawal of bids, because that's the last sentence in here. And we did some research on that, and it talks about the withdrawal, the time frame, the consequences, and procedures for withdrawal. So again, next time we come back, I will make sure, you know, I have some better language in there for you. And we'll determine if that is just our general policy or if that is a common school audit process. It feels good to clean up a very old document.
So I'm just wondering, again, you brought it forward as a policy for review because we're renumbering it, but there seems like there's a lot of changes, not so much in the content of it, but so does it stay under for review or does it come back as first reading?
I would recommend doing it as a first reading, and then we bring it as a second reading next month.
That's how
I'd like that too.
I'm feeling as well.
Great, and if you'll recall, I'm not sure what meeting it was at, but it was recommended, brought forth by Member Banks about talking that we provide an environment of mutual respect with the goal to ensure a diverse workforce. Therefore, the winning vendor of the contract understands and agrees that their company shall comply with all applicable laws relating to discrimination in employment and be welcoming of applicants to all genders, sexual orientation, age, and race for employment with their company. So I'd also like to add that to this policy, because Kathy's already, when she sends out project letters, we're adding that now to every project.
To every bid.
To every bid, excuse me.
I can't speak on behalf of the board, but I think there was a lot of agreement with, from all board members on that.
Great, so
Okay.
we'll add that as well then. Yeah, we'll give that to you.
You can have this.
So
One more thing.
any other questions? Otherwise, what we're hearing is some good initial background information with bringing it back for a first reading, and then having the links that we can double check things to where needed underneath the legal references or other references. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So Member Michael, and then Patty?
The only other question I had is like looking in those old 7,000 series policies, there did seem to be a lot of other policies related to contracts, and whether it's construction or wages, that kind of a thing. And so I was just curious if there's a timeline for reviewing those as well, or if there was an impetus to get this one in front of us because something's coming up, or if there's history or plans for.
I don't think it was, I think this one is used every day by us. And, I mean, Kathy uses it, this is what her job is. So we need to clean it up and bring it, so it's relevant for
Okay, so I
today.
just recognize there's one for awarding the contracts, so there's, we just discussed the bidding process, but then there's another one about awarding contracts, there's like change orders, supervision of construction, wage rates and hours, and so they all seem like they might be relevant and related.
Are we determined to keep something like that about awarding contracts, or what, are those part of a much older series, or?
Yeah, these are all in the 7,000 series, so it
Yeah.
is an old series. So what we can do is we can see if there's any model MSBA policies that align with them. And then if these are obsolete and we're not using them or don't need to, we
Correct.
can just delete them.
I-
So, yeah, whenever you could have time,
Well,
right?
when we have time, we will look at that, because
yeah,
I'm
look at those
thinking
different
maybe some of
policies.
that will be
Yeah.
obsolete.
I like the prevailing wage part of that, but there's also the local purchasing, the 3060 that I quote quite often.
So
So
go through it.
I think it's 3060 if I have it right here, but it was just at East. Was just at East asking, because they're spending down their budgets, and I'm asking them to stay local as much as possible. Don't always go to Amazon.
So would that be wordage that you would put into the bidding process?
Well, I guess
Or
that's
is that
something
a different policy you're referencing?
Well, that's part of all of those policies
Okay,
that we need to determine if we're going to keep them or get rid of some of them or just encompass all of them under the bidding. The bidding process is somewhat different from just the everyday purchasing of a teacher. So I feel like those standalones would be fine to stand alone, but if you feel that it's better to encompass it all in one area, one place,
We'll have to look and see if some are obsolete, though, so.
And it could even be if any of those older policies, if they're not obsolete, but there's not a MSBA policy that goes with it, we can just renumber it to the correct series. So we're getting rid of those old ones and having them in the 100 series.
Perfect.
So that's an option too.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So,
Thanks for
so
hearing this.
standalone policies are good.
Yes.
But if there are some that we can
Perhaps
delete
one.
totally because they're obsolete or combine, and if it makes sense with any model policies that fall under the 700 series with NSBA, so.
Then the only other comment I had, and this is very minuscule, so I don't know if, I just had a recommendation where it says him, her on here, if we could just change it to them or their, whichever fits.
Them,
Is
they.
everyone in agreement on that? Okay, thanks.
Thanks for listening to us. Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
We've already, sorry about that. Thank you. And we've already reviewed the harassment form. So I think that is it.
Just a general comment. I appreciate that we've rescheduled things so that we don't have that we rescheduled the HR business meeting so it doesn't immediately follow this, because I think it gives us more time to have better dialogue on things and not feel, because sometimes we felt a little constrained when we're waiting for another meeting to start. So I like having a little bit more time to go through the policies and go in greater depth. And also thanks to various members who sent questions in ahead of time for us to take a look at.
And just a reminder too, as much as possible, getting the questions on Monday is helpful. But thank you for coming and being ready to answer a few questions as well. So thank you. Anything else?